Matt, we got some big news, and good news for us Dunkin' Egg fans.
Yeah, so we know that this was announced the other day, sort of officially announced. George has sort of leaked that this A Night of the Seven Kingdoms, the Dunkin' Egg series, is going to be coming. But now we have that sort of like official HBO has announced it. So it's greenlit, greenlit. Unlike some things like even the Snow series, which they've said, hey, is in development. And George goes into some commenting about this. But, we haven't heard his side of this story yet here. So I got the article up here and we're just going to kind of quickly just read through it and do just sort of a quick little response here. So he says, it's called A Knight and a Squire. There's news all over the internet by now. The announcement was made on the 12th at Warner Media's big press event, for the rebranding of their new Streamio, which is now Streamer, which is now Max as opposed to HBO Max. Although literally one of the things I saw a logo that said Max, like the place for HBO. Like, so stupid.
Yeah, the branding is mind-boggling.
so dumb. It's so dumb. But anyway, here he says, so coming your way on May 23rd, right? I was sworn to secrecy till then, but now the word is out. I can go ahead and confirm it. Yes, it's true. There is another successor show on its way to you. Dunk and Egg are coming to HBO. The working title will be A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms, The Hedge Knight. Whether that's the final title, I can't say for sure, beyond saying that no, it won't be called Tales of Dunk and Egg or The Adventures of Dunk and Egg or something along those lines. I love Dunk and Egg, and I know that fans may refer to my series as the Dunk and Egg stories. There's a million of people out there who don't know that these stories and the title needs to intrigue them too, which I think is a really good point. If you think of these characters, Dunk and Egg, it sounds like a sitcom. Laverne and Shirley, Abbott and Costello, Beavis and Butthead. So no, we want knight in the title. Knighthood and chivalry are central themes to these stories. Aside from the title, what can I tell you? Not a lot. HBO has given us a green light to film a full season, not just a pilot, which
Let's
is
go.
huge, right? Most likely of 6 episodes, though that's not set in stone. It won't be until considerably later in the process. To date, I've written and published 3 novellas about Dunk and Egg, The Hedge Knight, The Sworn Sword, and The Mystery Knight. Each of them has been individually published in various anthologies before the collection together, A Night of the Seven Kingdoms. And Jimmy, you and I have talked a whole lot about this. In fact, it's actually my favorite A Song of Ice and Fire story. Hands down, it's my favorite. I love the book. I really love the audiobook. The audiobook is narrated it was a Harry Lloyd, who plays Viserys Targaryen in Game of Thrones, Daenerys's brother. He does an excellent job of narrating, and there are these sort of short stories. There's even graphic novels, which I think are another great way to experience these stories. It's just a very fun and sort of, it's a little bit more lighthearted of a read than the main series. So, continuing on here, he says, our premiere season will be an adaptation of the first of the 3 novellas, The Hedge Knight, the tale of how Dunk and Egg first met during a tourney at Ashford Meadow. The pilot script is already written, and I think it's terrific. It was written by Ira Parker, who's no stranger to Westeros. He was part of Ryan Condell's writing staff for the first season of House of the Dragon and wrote the 4th episode, King of the Narrow Sea. That's the one where Prince Daemon returns to King's Landing after conquering the Stepstones and takes Princess Rhaenyra down into the stews of Flea Bottom. Ryan Condell is on board as well as an executive producer, as so am I. There's no date set for the series premiere or even the show to begin shooting, but the writing is well underway. Ira has assembled a small but very talented team, and they are at it already, building on the foundations laid down last year in previous creative summits, and of course on the original novella. The Dunk and Egg novellas are fully fleshed narratives, more like the novels of A Song of Ice and Fire than the imaginary history of Fire and Blood. These stories are right there on the page, and our goal is to produce faithful adaptations of those tales to the screen. If The Hedge Knight turns out to be, well, as we hope it will, our hope is that it will go on and adapt The Sworn Sword and The Mystery Knight. This will take a few years. Then comes the hard part. Before we reach the end of the published stories, I will need time to write the other Dunk and Egg novellas that I have planned. They are many more of them, many more of them than I thought. There's the Village Hero and the Winterfell story, the one with the she-wolves, and maybe I need to write that Dornish adventure too, to slip in between the Hedge Knight and the Sworn Sword. And after that, there are more. I just need to finish the Winds of Winter and then do either a Dream of Spring or volume 2 of Fire and Blood and slip in a Dunkin' Egg between each of those in my copious spare time. That will keep me ahead of Ira and his merry crew for many more years. That's the part of this whole of this whole thing. Well, I'll worry about that tomorrow. Today we're celebrating, Dunkin' Egg are coming. So he just sort of just goes on to, thanks to people and stuff like that. He talks a little bit about how, this was really kind of, this was talked about in 2016, right? And, some of these other shows, he says the Nymeria show is still in development. So is the Sea Snake show. How long will it depends? Who knows? These things just take time. Westeros and Essos are a lot bigger, even with more stories. We just need time to tell them. So, Jimmy, what are your thoughts about this whole thing?
Oh, I'm beyond excited. I mean, we even talked a couple weeks ago, maybe, or a couple episodes ago. We talked about how, hopefully Dunkin' Egg wasn't on the chopping block, because we did talk about, hearing that some of these things were being shelved. I will take one issue with George in this post. He said that, like, I don't understand why people are saying these are canceled or like they're not happening. It's like, George, if I scroll down like 4 posts ago, you talked about how some things were being shelved because of the Warner Brothers merger. Like, you literally said that. Like, he actually said that. Now, to go as far as to say it's totally canceled, yeah, that might be a bridge too far. But like, what are we supposed to say? Like, you said they were shelved, right? So we have to start speculating whenever they're not being mentioned. So that's a little bit weird by George. It's like he doesn't like the way his words were taken, but they're his words. But whatever. I mean, we were just talking, though. I said, man, do you think Dunkin' Egg? Like, we haven't heard anything. And we just had that big media day, and I was kind of pessimistic. And now it turns out that I'm just a hater because it's happening. And I love the idea of 6 episodes. I think that is the exact way to go about it. And here's a question for you, Matt. Do you think they do 30 or 40-minute episodes instead of an hour?
I could see it, in all honesty, especially the first one, because the first one, so they're all audiobook wise about 3 hours, I believe. And they're broken up, at least in the audiobook version, into like 2 chapters. So it's like an hour and a half and then an hour and a half. The first one, man, I don't know that you could get 6 hours of television out of it.
I think you can. Because you're going to have to flesh out. Yeah, you're going to have to flesh out so many of those characters. It's not like the book where you can just like flip back and be like, oh, okay, I know that is. I know this.
Yeah.
Like, they're going to flesh out a lot of this stuff. And like, even Duncan, what's the puppeteer lady's name? I always forget her name. Help me out. Yes, thank you. Like, that whole scene can go a little bit further. There could be some additional scenes there. I think you get 6 hours out of it if you wanted to.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, the big character that this whole series has in it is a character who's actually in Game of Thrones. Although it's, loose.
Wild.
It's his character isn't talked about as much, and not done exactly the same, which is Bloodraven, right? In the books, the 3-eyed crow; in the show, the 3-eyed raven. Although they never specifically said that it was, this character Brendan Rivers, who is Bloodraven, who's basically like the Varys and Peter Baelish. If you're looking at this for the first time, you're unfamiliar. He's basically, sort of like the Baelish and Varys of this time period, but infinitely more deadly.
I say a step further into
infinitely more deadly, because he's a very skilled warrior in his own right. He's not like Larys Strong, who's the clubfoot, where these people don't have the physical attributes. Bloodraven has the physical attributes, and is perhaps one of like the most deadly warriors in the first place. And he's like an absurdly good archer. So he's like the most dangerous, and perhaps in the books, one of the most important characters to the ending of could be the key to, honestly, the whole thing in the main series of Song of Ice and Fire. So, incredibly important character who you're going to have to really, he's the character who you can spend the more time with. And we don't really see him. Like, you hear about him and stuff like that, but really it's like the 3rd book is where he makes his big appearance. So I love that this was announced, like officially announced, because, we know like the Snow Show, that's the one we've sort of been focusing on, but
it's going to take a while. Kind of what he said. These things are in development for 2016 for House of the Dragon. I mean, 6 years. So Snow getting talked about being put into production.
Yeah, we might not see Snow till like 2027.
I think it could be 2027 to 2030, somewhere around there. So like I
Right.
guess the big thing is like there's no rush. Except for Kit Harington maybe gets like really old. I guess like
Right.
if he starts aging very poorly, that might be one thing to concern themselves with. But I think another big thing that Duncan Egg is going to be able to aid is building the narrative behind the Blackfire rebellions. I think that is something they're going to spend a lot more time on, and it can segue into another show. This is pretty big, and I'm curious to see how a much slower, a little bit simpler of a plot resonates with the fandom, like the TV fandom, that is, not us readers, but I'm curious to see how that goes.
Yeah, the route I would honestly go with this show is I would use this to kick off. We talked about, I don't think it's going to happen right now, but you never know where we go down the line. This could kick off like the next sort of wave of House of the Dragon if you want to skip ahead a few centuries. We talked about it being like an anthology, not centuries, but decades. Skip ahead, because the next sort of big thing that's very similar to House of the Dragon is these Blackfire rebellions, which is what the Targaryen house splits, again, kind of like you have in the Dance of Dragons, but it's way more deadly. And I think much bigger and in a much more sort of important deal. Just because there's so many characters involved in it, and a lot of these events that happen involve these characters, Sir Duncan the Tall and Egg, who we find out is Aegon Targaryen. So yeah, I think the first one, I think 6 episodes is right. I think the second one, 6 episodes, is probably okay too. The third one might need to be 8. The third one, there's like a lot more going on. And of course you can expand around it and do some other things, but like it's kind of just like one like tournament, so it's just kind of like how do
you do have the
that
intro of Dunk, right? Like you're going to get the Sir Arlen of Pennytree. Maybe they add a little bit more context and we don't open up the cold open for the show of him digging a grave would be insane. I mean, that would,
so good.
It's one of my favorite opening lines of all time. So I would actually love that. I think that there's going to be a little bit more and maybe in between that and then getting to the tournament, and then maybe some POV switches. Like maybe we see the other side of the camp a little bit more. There's some stuff that they can tweak with it, but a 6 episode would be fine, I think, for like an hour episode, but also they could go down to 30 or 40 minutes. Like that is totally acceptable. It's cheaper to make then, which is also great.
Do you make this? And we've talked about this, is that if you were to take any Game of Thrones story and dial it back a little bit, you could not only release this like on HBO, you could release this on some other, this is the one that you could do on cable television.
Yeah, I would hope that they wouldn't, because the thing about Duncan Egg that I really like is that it is a little bit more of a simplistic story. Like George isn't doing as much with the plot here, and the writing is very accessible. It's good stuff, but I think that the violence in the tournament is like the levity that you kind of need that weight, and I would hate for them to pull away from the violence to make it more accessible, because I think that is one, you're kind of like, oh, this is Westeros, duh, like don't forget where we're at. But 2, it also shows that like the consequences are super high whenever you're entering in these tourneys, and like what Dunk's getting himself into being a knight and what goes with that. So I feel like I would be a little upset if they shied away from the violence, but
I guess what I'm just thinking is, I think you could do this show to the maturity level and still, I'll give you two sort of comparisons here. I think you could do it at the like Breaking Bad and Walking Dead are still pretty kind of graphic. I mean, they're not on like network television like your ABC, NBC. But it's still on like satellite dish, that's before you get to like that HBO, because there's like degrees of what you can show. And if you can get a show like onto cable, it opens it up to a much larger audience.
Yeah, but like, what's the next step out of that, right? Like the kid, like a 12-year-old watches it and it's like, I love this. And like, wait till you watch Game of Thrones, son. It's like, where do they go after that? I agree with you. I think that this is an opportunity to get a wider audience, and maybe because it's a little bit more of a friendlier, we'll say, a plot, that maybe that is the give and take. Like, hey, we can attract more people because it can be a little bit more family friendly. So it'll be interesting to see. There shouldn't be a ton of sex and stuff in this, but it's HBO, so that there's going to be boobies, no doubt.
Right. Yeah, well, especially in the third one.
There'll be some
There's the
boobies.
yeah. Yeah, so I'm just you just never know. But yeah, I'm super excited for it because we talked about it before and I absolutely love it. I have the graphic novels of all three. I have the hardcover book as well and I cannot push the audiobooks on this one enough because I think it's just so good. But yeah, I'm super excited for it. 6 episodes now. Real quick here. What do you about that little wins a winner bit when he said, "Oh, maybe I should publish
Well, I saw an
one
article that
of
he's going to be
these"?
writing for Dunk and Egg. So by that's another difference. Like in House of the Dragon, he's not writing. But I've seen in the articles online from like Hollywood Report, all these places, they're saying that he's not just an executive producer, but he's going to be in the writing room. Now, is he going to be in the writing room 8 hours a day? No. But is he going to write? It sounds like it. Sounds like he might even write an episode.
Right.
I'm going to be honest. I think the whole paragraph about him being like, I got to write Dream of Spring, Fire and Blood 2, and then fit in all these Duncan. I think it's a joke. Like, I think he's making light of himself there.
Okay. Yeah.
That's how I read it, at least. And I think that this is his consolation prize. And I think this is why he's going to do writing on the show, is because he knows that he's never going to be able to finish those books. And he's like, well, I can put them on
the
screen.
Duncan Egg. The
Duncan Egg. He can just put them on screen. Like, this is our consolation prize as fans. It is what it is. Like, he only
writing wise. Yeah, writing wise for me is honestly you need to finish Winds and A Dream of Spring. Though you like those are the before you die, George. Those are the two you have to finish, especially Winds of Winter. Honestly, as long as we get Winds of Winter, then it's like the ending is like we
will get wins no matter what. Even if he were, if he decided he was never going to write another page and just stopped writing tomorrow, what he has, they would formulate into a book and release it. So it's too big of a cash cow.
Like Fire and Blood, he doesn't really need to do a whole lot. There's a lot of context in World of Ice and Fire. I mean, you could honestly leave it as it is, and like we got the picture. And you can just HBO and those guys that did House of the Dragon can go in and do it their way, and I'm sure I'll be hooked for it. So I don't really feel like the need, like, oh man, I really want Fire and Blood Volume 2. The Duncan Egg stories, those are great, and I love them and I want them. But really, we also kind of have the main story. It's the ending that's kind of the most exciting part, which, you could do. This could be 7 seasons.
Yeah, and here's the thing. This is the potential to tell us what happened at Summerhall, which I think is going to tie into the main series, and it gives a lot of motivations for around the Targaryens at that time, right? And what happens to Egg. So we got to find out what happened at the tragedy Summerhall, which is where Rhaegar is born, which is an insane scene that we might see on television. Like, that is crazy to me. But
that's how the show would end.
I also want to be realistic in saying that it could get canceled before then. I don't think it would, but there is a chance. So I'm trying to like kind of measure myself down, because 7 seasons of any television show is a lot. You're lucky to get 3 nowadays. So hopefully we get to see all the way to Summerhall. But I feel like this show is the consolation prize of George being like, well, I need to get the story out there. So I'll get it out there. I'll finish Winds of Winter, and then I'll work on Dream of Spring. Fire and Blood 2, I don't think would take nearly as much effort, to be honest with you. So
I like half of it's already written.
Yeah, and also, by the way, he has worked on She-Wolves, the novella for Duncan Egg. He has done work on that. So I don't know how much work. I don't know if it's close to being done. So like, there is a chance we could see a Duncan Egg novella again. Like, I actually believe that could happen. I think Winds of Winter is his first and primary goal as far as writing in books goes. There's a lot of people upset about this, as there always are. But
keep in mind also with the Duncan Egg novellas, those are like, again, 3-hour audiobooks. So it's like one little graphic novel. Like the Duncan Egg stories, if he only ever wrote those, we'd have like 200 of them.
Yeah. They're very contained, though they do have a lot of threads that kind of like start teetering out, especially in the third one. You're like, wait, what? Big stuff. And that is kind of the fun of Duncan Egg. Like, you can see the potential of it. But for him to knock out like a Dorne one and whatnot, it might only take him 2 years or so. And I'm giving him a lot of leeway because, he takes a lot to write. But we'll see. I just hope we get the show, and I hope it's a success, and I hope we see all the seasons and we see Rhaegar born at Summerhall. Like, that would be, my God.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, like I said, with this, it was announced the other day, but I wanted to pop on here and do just a quick like reaction, especially now that we got this little bit of news from George. I'm super, super stoked for it. I cannot honestly wait to see the show, and once they get casting rolling and everything, who you're gonna go with. It's gonna be a ton of fun because this is like I love these stories. And again, I highly encourage people to check out like the audiobook or the graphic novel of these. And
Yep.
And then once you finish these, so in 7 year or 14 years, if you go every other year, then we could see Robert's Rebellion. So
and we would be far enough removed from the original show that we could have some recastings, and I don't think it would hurt as bad.
Right. Yeah.
Yep.
So
exciting stuff, dude.
Yeah, it's so sweet. I'm so excited for this. So all right, guys.